So now we're getting to the second half of May. We've had the 4 months or so in the fitting bay through a really busy time of the year, and we've wanted to give you a bit of a rundown of a few different categories of irons which have been performing particularly well. So we're going to go through, we've had a chat with all the fitters and we've had a consensus on which heads we feel have done the best for certain categories. So best for moderate speeds and providing ball flight, best for forgiveness, best for tech without just knuckling spin off, so kind of an all-round performance but putting a load of tech in. And then we're going to cover the best-selling iron this year. So we're going to run through each of those, talk a little about the heads and why they perform so well, and then give you that kind of benchmark at the end of which head's been the best seller for us. So focusing more on the slightly more forgiving side of the categories until we, depending what we carry out until we get to the best seller. And so starting with best for moderate speeds. Now, the one that's performed the best this year, Mizuno's JPX 925 HL. Now the 923 HL that was the previous model was good, but the progression in forgiveness, height, stability off center, the sole profile, the 925 this year has been a real standout. And a lot of this reason comes from getting mass down the bottom and getting the ball airborne quickly. So at moderate speeds, there's less, goes without saying, there's less ball speed. So therefore getting the ball up and airborne quickly to get carry distance and consistency of carry distance is really, really critical. And this model has been exceptionally good at it. I would say a real standout. Across the board, this was without hesitation, the fitters all mentioned. So you've got plenty of mass down the bottom, got plenty of perimeter weighting for forgiveness, using some face tech. We've got a nice graduation of the sole shape so the back edge doesn't get in the way to help get the head underneath and flight it up. There's just everything about this head, as well as the progression on ball speed versus the 923 has been an absolute winner this year. So what kind of performance does it give us? So I'm going to hit a couple. I'm going to keep club head speed down, kind of more nearer the sort of the 80 mile an hour mark, just to be relevant to this head. But what we can see there, you can see just from where it hits the screen, is how much you've gone slower. That's 72. Is how high up the screen that hit. So normally you'd say, well, the harder you hit it, the higher you're going to get in terms of flight. So without club speed, you can't get height. Now this one, 72 club speed, won the efficiency, 1.4, so plenty of ball speed there. We're at 20 degrees launch, and for that swing 4.7 on spin. Now at that kind of club speed with the Pro V1, which is not a high spinning golf ball, that's a really great spin rate. So you're getting plenty of height, plenty of stopping power, but it's such a stable head across the face. Feels like you can hit it pretty much anywhere. But in terms of that launch angle, even if I don't try and help it in the air, again, I've not tried to lift that, I've sort of covered it a bit, I've got a bit more on top of that. We're still at 17 degrees launch angle with a 4-degree angle of attack. So I've covered that and brought the launch down a little bit. So yes, it does have a little bit more loft than some other heads, but that's the whole design principle of the HL. You're seeing that with Callaway with the Elite HL. You could retro loft the pings in the 440s. These high launch model heads are starting to become much, much more prevalent. We're going to see some launches, I'm sure, later in the year that add to those sort of heads. But to be able to get that kind of flight from a 70 mile an hour swing, really, really impressive, and say very stable across the face. It's been an absolute standout this year. So if you need a little bit of ball speed help, but a bit of help getting it in the air, this is absolutely the best head that we've seen this year. So now we move on to maximum forgiveness. Now there are a lot of contenders in this category, but it won't surprise you to know that the head that most of our fitters have said, again, pretty quickly, Ping G440. Ping, so well known for forgiveness, for stability, consistency. That's been their kind of gameplay over the years. We see it with the drivers, we see it with the irons as well. Plenty of perimeter weighting, plenty of structural resistance to kind of bowing and twisting. You've got rigidity within the frame. We've got that faster face. We've got plenty of tungsten, as you see that weight down the bottom of the toe there. Got some in the hosel as well. So there's lots of weight spread away from the center of the face. It's really Ping's calling card in terms of performance. They've neatened up the head shape a bit this year, which is actually quite nice. It's a little less sort of chunky looking, but in terms of a cross-face performance, this one's been incredibly consistent. Now it does have a stronger loft. You can what we call retro the lofts and add 2 degrees on to get a bit more flight, but standard 6-iron loft on this is down around the 26 degree mark, so it's pretty strong. But you've got an awful lot of the face that you can strike with. So if I get one fairly central, or not fat it. So fat, there isn't a club head out there that can save a fat. So having said that, still a 135 efficiency, but not really, you can't really blame the club head for that one. That's an error in human and not in club head. There we go. Got the ball first, which tends to help. So plenty of ball speed, say 1.45 efficiency, really strong ball speed performance there. A very, very stable feel. I think that's one of the things when you're striking this head, there's very little sensation of the head twisting. I mean, even that first one, there was absolute rotter of a strike, absolute stinker. Didn't feel like there's a lot of vibration there. There's the kick off the mat, but actually across the face, the head really stays with the strike. So lots of ball speed there. Reasonable amount of launch angle as well. If I take this a little bit off center, try and move the strike out to the toe a little bit. So certainly not a centered strike. We still get a 140 efficiency. I mean, that one is a little low as well, so kept a bit of spin on there. Now the launch angle isn't as high as the Mizuno, which is why that was better for the lower speeds about getting that flight up. I'm hitting this a little bit harder, so the carry distances are different. But to find that strike point and get a 140 efficiency, that's really quite impressive, and that is why this head wins out for forgiveness across all other brands this year. So now we're looking at kind of the head that's got the most tech in, but that doesn't just produce a low spin bomb, because what tends to happen is you put a load of tech in the head, you put a thinner face in, which gains ball speed, it moves the center of gravity lower, you put a load of tungsten in to spread weight away from the center, moves the center of gravity lower, so you get plenty of launch, but you get no spin. Now the head that's given the best balance of tech and performance, the Thai Fusion Callaway. Now, you won't see too many people using these. They're not the cheapest head in the world because of the amount of different materials, the complexity of the build. Structurally, this is a dearer head to make than most, which is why it's dearer at retail. And not everyone likes the black head. But in terms of actual, the amount of tech that's gone into it, the titanium, the fusion technology, the tungsten in there, the speed of the face, this is a really, really high performance head. And it retains some spin, which is another key element to it. So, what does it do from a numbers point of view? Well, it's very neat looking as a head relative to the kind of, I guess, category you put it into. They thinned out the top line a little bit more, and the black does make it look pretty sleek. Plenty of forgiveness, but ball speed wise 145 efficiency. Now that's up there with the G440, which is a bit of a bomber, designed really just to kind of get it going forward, lots of forgiveness. This one, 15.7 launch, it's retained 4,500 revs of spin without just creating this sort of big bulbous club head. So in relative to where it sits from a shape point of view, the softness of the feel as well, it's not a harsh, hard, clicky head. The package that they've got ticks an awful lot of boxes, and so unfortunately it ticks quite an expensive one as well. And the head weight, as a result of getting all that tech into there, the head weight is a little on the heavier side, which for some builds does make it slightly prohibitive, which is probably why from a sales point of view, we've not done a vast amount of these. But actually what Callaway have done with the tech and the overall sort of what you might kind of call playing experience, the sound and the feel and the feedback, this is a really, really impressive head. And it's actually a head that quite several of their tour players have put in 4 irons. 4 irons, 5 irons, 4 irons, 3 irons, sort of a long iron to get that ball speed progression, get that forgiveness, but not to just see a nosedive and spin. So actually quite a popular head, generally speaking, but you've got to have some deep pockets to go there. So now we're getting to which heads have actually sold the most in the bays. Now the caveat to this is that this includes all kinds of club heads. So we're focused on the slightly more forgiving end of things. Now we do see a lot of mid-lower handicap golfers in there. So the sales numbers tend to skew a little bit towards those. But what is great is how many higher handicappers are coming in and getting fitted, because there's so much relevance for them. And traditionally it's been an area where we've tended to see very low handicappers, but it's so great to see the growth in the higher handicappers getting fitted. Hence I wanted to focus on those heads. But in terms of best selling, I'm going to give a couple of honourable mentions first. So first honourable mention, Ping I230. Wonderful all-round head. From a performance point of view, it's got moderate head shape, fairly neat top line, that bit of perimeter weighting, tungsten weight in the toe and in the heel, as per the G440, shares some of the characteristics there, but being a little bit pared back, it retains some flight, retains some spin. So from a consistency point of view, it's not a hot head from a yardage standpoint. And the slightly thicker line for some players is a little bit less comfortable to look at, which is why it doesn't quite win it. But from a performance point of view, really versatile, especially if you're going longer than standard with the head weights we can achieve. But just a great all-around head. Not a bomber, but great for retaining some flight and stable, moderate spin rates. Next honourable mention, Srixon ZXi5, the ZX5 series before that. This has just been continuously been a really strong performing head. The ZXi series, there's a little bit more mass lower down. They've just, sort of fine-tuned the kind of the main frame, the structure of the faces, the tech and the face. Slight fine-tunes to the V-sole, which has been a real kind of standout characteristics for them in terms of turf interaction. The one reason, again, that this doesn't quite win out is very low spin, or can be very low spin. So it's not quite as much of an all-rounder, but plenty of forgiveness, loads of ball speed, good for launch angle, and great if you wanted to keep a bit of spin down. Lovely soft frame from the forging, great sound off the face, and really, really good seller all round, but that a little bit more forgiving than the Ping, but a little bit lower spin as well. So quite strong for yardage, but can come in a little bit hot. So where do we go for bestseller? Well, this year, T150. Going to be updated in August. There's sort of a next generation launch coming where there are just about to be some pictures coming online. Reason why this has sold so well, very, very traditional clean top line, which it's a lot of the Verticons, the good players like, but it's just a very clean head shape, not overly big, but there's enough head there just to get some confidence from. The tungsten in the heel and the toe, now that's produced a lot of stability. This is a head where a lot of players have said, actually that's much more user-friendly than I thought it would be. One, partly the Titleist brand, but also the head shape being that bit neater. That little cavity, the channel in the back, that's helping thin out the face a bit, get some progression of ball speed. So we've got a progression of performance through the set as well. And it's not overly low spin. So when we take each of the characteristics that we want to see, we've got ball speed and tech progression through the head, we've got stability from the tungsten heel and toe, we've got a neat, clean, traditional head shape. Got a brand, ultimately Titleist are probably a bit of an aspirational brand. I think the branding helps a certain amount in that it's just a very, very popular product, and there's a very clear progression in that product over the years too. But just raw numbers off this head, good for ball speed, good for looks, solid feel, good for spin. That makes it a very, very popular head, and one that ultimately sells itself. So numbers wise, how does it compare? Nice solid feel, bit of a pop off the face to not kind of feel too harsh, but efficiency wise 142, I flighted that up a little bit, but good ball speed performance for something that's in the players category. Plenty of forgiveness, moderate spin. Just feels an easy head to hit relative to other heads in this kind of category over the years. And that's that little bit extra ball speed versus something like the i230, or maybe take the Mizuno, the MP243, that bit better off-center performance that's just knocked this one slightly ahead of all its rivals. So best-selling head for us this year, Titleist T150. So hope you've enjoyed this roundup. We'll be doing some others of these down the line. If there are any other kind of formats or styles ahead that you like kind of to know what's doing best in the bay, just let us know. Send us a message and we'll do our best to get that in the content for you. If you like this sort of format, we've got these videos we did recently of driver comparisons at the start of the year for both low spin and the kind of core model heads, as well as a couple of follow-ups to that with requests for some of the Wilson, the Srixon product to test. So we do listen to you. But if you like this, hit the like button, subscribe. We look forward to getting you some more content in the near future.